A few weeks ago, I posted my initial thoughts on Gen1Recomp and said my gut was telling me this might be the definitive Generation 1 experience. I've now beaten the Elite Four, caught Mewtwo, and I'm ready to give you my full verdict. And honestly, it held up better than I expected, and there is a lot more to talk about than I covered the first time round. What is it? Briefly, if you haven't seen the initial thoughts video, I will link it above, but the short version is this. Gen1Recomp is a fan-made recreation of Pokémon Red, Blue and Yellow by developer BryanThaBoi. It is not an emulator, it runs natively on virtually every platform you own, it supports mods, and it uses no copyrighted assets. That foundation is what makes everything else in this review possible. The Kanto experience. Something I did not expect from this playthrough was how much completing a full run of Kanto reminded me of what made this generation so special in the first place, especially as I have played through Kanto many times, Fire Red as a child, the re-releases of Red, Blue and Yellow on the 3DS Virtual Console, and many other ROM hacks subsequently. Giovanni is genuinely a menacing villain. Team Rocket feel like a real evil team throughout the game, not just a quirky obstacle you brush past on the way to the next gym. The stakes feel appropriate, and the evil team actually earns that description. Compared to many modern Pokemon titles where the antagonists feel increasingly watered down, coming back to the original games was a genuine reminder of how much better the formula worked when the villain was allowed to be properly sinister. Blue is another one. Your rival in Generation 1 actively chooses the starter that is strong against yours. He's competitive, dismissive, and genuinely difficult to beat when you encounter him throughout the game. He is not your friend. He is not there to support you. He is there to beat you, and he means it. That dynamic is something that the series has constantly softened in subsequent games and generations, and playing this reminded me how much it added to the overall experience, like beating Silver in the rival games in Pokemon Gold and Silver. Losing to Blue and having to rethink your team felt meaningful in a way that rivalries in more recent games simply don't replicate, and you don't even lose to your rivals in the modern games because your team is strong against all of their team. Playing Gen1Recomp is a genuinely fun reminder that Generation 1 captured something about the Pokemon adventure that the series has struggled to hold on to consistently throughout all of the future releases. The world feels a little dangerous, the competition feels real, and the journey feels like it matters. That is not just nostalgia talking, those design choices do hold up, even now. Graphics and presentation. I want to revisit what I said in the initial thoughts video about the graphical glitches because my view has changed after a full run and completing the game. Yes, they are still there, it is not perfect. Entering new areas can produce visual issues, and battles occasionally have rough edges, particularly with multiple mods active at the same time. But here is the thing, you do get used to them, and over time they stop feeling like bugs and start feeling like quirks. Generation 1 was never a visual showcase to begin with, and the overall presentation, particularly with the 3D voxel mod enabled or the battle cinematic camera, is so far ahead of anything else available for this game that the occasional glitch barely registered. The voxel art style held up across the entire playthrough. Kanto in this style has a depth and a colour palette that the original games could obviously never offer, and there were moments in the late game, Cerulean Cave, before the Mewtwo encounter in particular, Victory Road, Indigo Plateau, where I genuinely stopped to appreciate how good it looked. That feeling did not wear off over the course of a full run, which is the real test. Quality of life and ease of play. This section has expanded significantly since the initial thoughts video because the project has kept developing and there is now substantially more to talk about. The core mod quality of life setup remains the same, reusable TMs, the Generation 3 box system, the XP share. All of these I initially mentioned proved their value across a full playthrough, and I stand by every point I made about them previously. But there are far more features that became available through subsequent updates and also through my familiarity with how the Recomp mod works. The experience multiplier is something I want to highlight specifically. This is part of a system of mods called quality of life toggles. You can now adjust the rate of experience gained per battle, multiplying it by 2, 3, or 4 times, depending on how much you want to lean into the casual experience. If you are seeking a challenge, you can also reduce it to half for a harder run. The same system applies to the money gained from each battle as well. This is not just an XP share toggle, but they actually work together, and this allows you to have granular control over the pace of your entire playthrough. And for someone playing in short bursts between demanding on-call shifts, it made an enormous difference. I could breeze through the game on nights I needed to, and dial it back when I had more time to invest. That kind of flexibility is genuinely rare. Also, if I felt my team were becoming too overleveled, I could change the quality of the experience multiplier, and the same, if I felt they were becoming underleveled, I could increase it, which is really, really cool. The save editor is the other major addition, and it deserves its own mention. Built directly into the app as a drop-down menu, it is one of the most comprehensive tools I have seen in a project like this, integrated so seamlessly. You can edit your entire party, your PC boxes, your items, your money, your Pokédex, your trainer data, quest flags, and key story progression points. The scope of it is comparable to the program PK Hex, if you've heard of this, but the accessibility is completely different. For context, using PK Hex on the 3DS back in the day on Pokemon Sun and Moon meant backing up your save file, copying it to an SD card, copying it to the computer, editing it, copying it back, putting it back in the 3DS, and if something went wrong, starting that entire process again from your backup. Here, it is simply a drop-down menu before you start the game. If I needed an evolution stone, I could add it in less than 10 seconds and get back into the game. For some people, that might take away from the experience, but for me, as someone who has played the series for a long time and who genuinely just wants to enjoy the adventure, catch the legendaries, and enjoy the new graphics, this was absolutely perfect. It cut out from the grinding without cutting out from the fun. Cross-device syncing has also just been added, allowing you to sync your mod list and save file across multiple devices. For anyone switching between their phone, a laptop, and a home computer or console, this is a practical and genuinely useful feature that removes one of the main friction points of multi-platform play. The mods. Full playthrough perspective. The mod ecosystem has grown considerably, and a full run gives you a different perspective on it. Mod compatibility is the one area that still needs a little bit of work. Running multiple mods simultaneously can cause conflicts, and this is something to be aware of before you start building your ideal setup. The good news is that progress has been made, and the latest version of the project now includes a built-in compatibility checker that includes which mods are conflicting with each other and allows you to disable them very quickly. This is a significant improvement over the early days where compatibility issues required more manual troubleshooting. It is not perfect yet, but it is definitely moving in the right direction. The story content mods are worth highlighting separately because they add something genuinely new to a game that most people have played 1,000 times before, including myself. The Ghost Marowak encounter and the Crystal Onyx are new chapters or quests that you can add, as well as other battles, rematches with Team Rocket, which are really, really cool. There are also some quest lines which have been adapted from the anime, as well as implemented additions that feel like they actually belong in the same world as Kanto, rather than being bolted on or too heavily fan created or taken away with the liberties. If you have any familiarity with the anime, these moments will land particularly well. Platform differences are also worth being honest about. Playing on Windows gives you access to the full range of mods with the fewest complications. On Android, accessing certain mods, such as the Stadium sprites, requires root permissions to reach the storage path of the Android files, which is not straightforward for most people on the latest version of Android. I still thoroughly recommend the Android experience, and that's what I played on, but it is worth knowing that the Windows version currently currently offers a more complete modding setup with very little interference. And I want to mention that because I remember watching so many cool mod videos, particularly ones where they use the stadium sprites or other ROM bases, some mods where they've actually added multiple Pokédexes from other regions into the Generation 1 games, but without being able to access the app data files, it's extremely difficult to implement those mods and the assets required for them to run seamlessly. Highlights. Several moments across the full run stood out. The Mewtwo encounter in Cerulean Cave was the obvious peak because I love legendaries and it earned it. Arriving at that moment with the team I had built and managed across the whole game felt like a nice payoff. The save editor transformed how I engaged with the game during the busiest on-call stretch I've ever done. Being able to quickly adjust my setup between shifts and get straight back into the adventure without the grinding meant I actually finished the game rather than setting it down when life got in the way. And that is not a small thing, particularly as we get older and our free time gets less. Additionally, sometimes when you look back on a game, it feels really nostalgic and you really remember the best parts. But then when you try and play it again, you literally just get stuck in the most boring, tedious, grinding parts. And without having to go through that as much, it really does bring out the highlights of the game a lot more. The rival battles with Blue throughout the game were a consistent highlight. Every encounter felt like it meant something, and the final battle genuinely felt climactic, especially if, like a long-time fan such as myself, I was never that keen on the Pokemon anime, but they did a spin-off series called Pokemon The Origin, and I really liked a couple of cool moments, such as the Mewtwo battle and the Blue battle. They really held some good emotional tension, and getting myself to experience that again by playing through the Recomp was really cool as well. The story content mods also add moments of genuine surprise and freshness to a game I've experienced many times before, and that's something I would say is difficult to achieve through a standard ROM or ROM hack base. Main gripes. Mod compatibility is the main ongoing issue. The checker has improved, but conflicts between mods are still a reality, and some combinations that seem like they should work together simply do not. This requires patience and some willingness to experiment or tinker with your settings yourself. The Android experience, while still excellent and wonderful to play through, is not fully on par with Windows for modding, and I suspect that's true for iOS as well. The Stadium Sprites issue is the most notable example, but there are others as well, and it reflects a broader point that some of the more advanced features require a level of technical access that is not straightforward on mobile or every single device which the recompilation project is available for. The graphical glitches remain present as mentioned. They are more forgivable after a full run than they felt in the first few hours, but they have not been resolved and they are worth keeping in mind. However, there is progress towards resolving these, and in the later parts of the playthrough, I noticed that the Voxel mod actually added in a pre-built cache, so before you booted up the game, when you start your save file, it will actually ask you if you want to pre-render the areas, and that means that when you go to new areas, the kind of stutter or lag will be less. Overall verdict. Gen1Recomp held up better over a full playthrough than my initial thoughts suggested it would. The project has kept developing, the mod ecosystem has grown, the save editor and experience multipliers as part of the quality of life toggles have added genuine value, and the underlying game reminded me over the course of a full run exactly why Generation 1 earned its reputation back in the day. Is it the most polished experience available to man? No. Mod compatibility needs work. The other versions of the game that are not on Windows, for example Android and iOS, have limitations, and the graphical quirks are still present across all platforms. But as the most flexible, accessible, and genuinely enjoyable way to experience Generation 1 in 2026, nothing else comes close. I also want to be direct about something. I have played other recent Kanto ROM hacks and enjoyed some of them, but Gen1Recomp added more to the experience than I anticipated and delivered something none of the others quite managed, covering one of those alternatives in a future video, but the comparison only reinforced how well this project has been put together. That comparison, by the way, is Pokemon Aesthetic Red. It was a bit disappointing for me, but we'll cover that later. I would totally recommend you to play the Generation 1 Recomp if you have any love for Generation 1 or Kanto. The mod ecosystem, the save editor, the experience multiplier, and the multi-platform flexibility make this the definitive way to experience the original games right now. Hold off if you need a fully polished experience with no compatibility issues whatsoever, or if you are coming in with no connection to the originals. The story and the world are faithful to 1996, and that will not suit everyone. My initial thoughts asked whether this might be the definitive Generation 1 experience. Having finished it, the answer is definitely yes. Not flawless, but definitely the best we have, and genuinely better than anything official Nintendo has offered in years. Once again, fans do what Nintendo don't. Let me know in the comments whether you agree and if you have tried it yet, and also which mods you found the most useful or fun to experience. I'll see you guys in the next one.